Today we have the quintessential comparison, a 2014 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution X GSR against a 2021 Subaru WRX STI. We essentially have the last generation of the Evo and of the STI, the Evo X, made until the 2015 model year, and the VA STI made until 2021. Market value for these is also similar, although the edge goes to the Evo simply because it's more rare. They made like 10 times more the number of STIs than Evos. So we're looking around maybe 40K for the Evo and around 35K for a similar STI. However, I will admit this comparison is not fair because while the STI is completely stock, this Evo has quite a list of mods. As always, the full mod list is down in the description. What you need to know is that, first of all, this is powered by a 2-liter turbo inline-4. That's the 4B11 engine, not the 4G63, which is rated at 291 horsepower at 6,500 RPM and 300 pound-feet at 4,000 RPM. However, with the mods, it's now making 320 horsepower and 309 pound-feet of torque on a Mustang dyno. That's made it to a 5-speed manual transmission, whereas in comparison, the Subaru WRX STI has a 6-speed manual transmission. Whereas keep in mind, if you wanted a 6-speed, it wouldn't be a manual, but you could get a DCT if you went with the Evo MR. Now in comparison, the STI is powered by the EJ257, that's a 2.5-liter turbocharged flat 4, unlike the inline 4 in the Evo, and it's making 310 horsepower at 6,000 RPM, 290 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM. In terms of weight, the STI is about 100 pounds lighter, coming in around 3,450 pounds, whereas the Evo is a bit over 3,500. So from factory, the Evo actually would be down on power and also have greater weight compared to the STI. So on paper, that would be a big advantage to the STI. And here that has made it to a 6-speed manual transmission, quite a bit more modern. Even in 2014, a 5-speed manual transmission did feel a bit antiquated. The wheelbase on both is exactly the same at 104.3 inches. Both of them have McPherson strut in the front, multi-link suspension in the rear. Both of them have their own unique all-wheel drive systems. So in Subaru, it's the symmetric all-wheel drive, and the center diff is called the DCCD, the driver controlled center differential. Whereas with the Evo, we have what's called the Super All-Wheel Control System, SAWC, and the center diff is called the just ACD, Active Center Differential. Both of them will have a helical LSD in the front, whereas in the rear, the Subaru STI has a Torsen LSD, whereas with the Evo, we have an electronically controlled LSD that gives you that AYC, which is the active yaw control, to get a little bit more yaw at corner exit. Now, as for the settings, we can control the throttle here. Sport Plus is a bit binary, as you can see from the curve. We're gonna go into Sport. And then the center diff, the DCCD, you can go auto with more front bias with that plus, or more rear bias with the minus, or you can go into manual and have it more open or more locked. So by default, we have a 41% front to 59% rear torque distribution. And by keeping it more open, we're gonna have it more rearward. You gotta love that for both vehicles, they have hydraulic steering, which is fantastic because actually the regular WRX went to E-Pass, but even in 2021, Subaru said, you know what? We want this car to have better steering feel, so they kept hydraulic steering. And of course, with the Evo 2014, which is still, when a lot of cars had already moved to E-Pass, they also retained hydraulic steering, which if you're all about the driving, that's a big win for steering feedback and feel. I actually really enjoy the seating position here. You have to remember this is a sedan, so you're sitting more upright than you would in a sports car, but the steering wheel telescopes out really far back, the seat is comfortable, and the gear shift is a little bit low and a little bit far, but again, it comes with the territory of not being a dedicated ground-up sports car. Oh, nice solidity in that brake pedal. Feels very modern, that immediate grab and bite. Heel toe, no issue. Very stable. Okay, I'm trying to get a little bit of rotation, but Ooh, there we go. Yeah, this is a car that inspires confidence. You really have to throw it around side by side and really intentionally try to get the tail out, as I was doing back there, if you want to play and dance with it. Let's go now into auto with a rear bias as it is set right now. Very much a Subaru transmission, if you know what I mean. So it has these kind of longer, lighter throws that have a bit of that notchiness between gates. Not the crispest, not the most enjoyable to use, but it's definitely good enough. The clutch pedal throws are very long and gradual. The bite point isn't a sudden mark. It's actually quite long and easy. Not difficult to be smooth with. The engine note is actually quite muted, surprisingly. But keep in mind, this is completely stock, and you can very much easily open that up with an exhaust. Oh, handles that like a champ. Ooh. Getting a little bit light there. You can feel, that's one of my favorite corners here because it's a bit off camber, decreasing radius and downhill, so it can really upset a car. And here it actually transmits that, hey, I'm starting to get light out. I'm just about to start rotating at the rear. That bit of communication in a car like this that weighs almost 3,500 pounds and is a large four-door is awesome. Now I'm noticing, in terms of throttle mapping, when you're at the lower revs, because this is a turbo 2.5 liter, you do have a bit of lag. So at the lower revs, you have to jab that throttle extra hard. Even here at 3,000 RPM getting on the throttle, you have to wait quite a while for those turbos to spool. But let's try that again at a higher RPM. Let's say we're at 5,000 RPM or 4,500 when the turbos are spooled up. Still a bit of lag, not terrible though. That's a common point of confusion, is that spool threshold versus turbo lag. So if I go to 2,000 RPM and then floor it, of course the turbos aren't even spooled up. But if I'm at 4,500 when the turbos are spooled up and then get on the throttle, that's when we're talking about lag. Let's give you a pull uphill. No slouch. Right around 300 horsepower and 3,000 pounds, I think, is the sweet spot. So this car is just a bit heavy, but it doesn't really feel sluggish. This feels capable. Now the issue is that with the EJ 257, if you want to get more power, these don't have as much of a ceiling as the Mitsubishi, and the reliability is also questionable. Hashtag head gaskets. Oh yeah, look at that. Getting a decent amount of road texture through the wheel, but let's see if I can get a bit more load up dynamically. It's actually a very light steering rack. And even when I brake, get some weight over the front and turn, it's not dynamically loading as much as I would like. It feels, the steering does actually feel like it's a decade or more earlier than the rest of the vehicle, in the sense that the steering ratio is a bit slower, the actual weight is a bit lighter. You can rotation. Now with the stock suspension, it is a little bit on the softer side, which makes sense. They don't want this car to be absolutely punishing straight from the factory, but it's the body control leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's not bad, and you have to keep in mind what kind of vehicle this is. I can feel that beginning of rotation, mid-corner, corner exit. Engine is so quiet you can't even hear it as it gets to redline. The reason I find the STI fun isn't because it's super communicative. It is communicative enough. It is not insanely fast. It is fast enough. It is not gonna dance with you at the limit. The all-wheel drive system is all about stability. But the reason I find it fun is that it's so capable, right? It's a car that you can toss it in, do things that are not necessarily right, and it'll just handle it. No drama, no fuss. It just impresses you with what it's able to do, what it's capable of. And it actually gives you more confidence as a result as a driver. And now it's time to see how it compares against the Evo 10. So in terms of mods, the Evo has mostly power mods. It has a tune, again, making more power than stock by about 40-50 horsepower. And it does not have the Bilstein dampers. That actually only came on the MR, not the GSR, but the owner added Swift springs. And forgot to mention earlier, on the Subaru STI, we have Yokohama Advanced Sports and a 245 section width square. And here we have Michelin PS4S, also square, 245 section width. Oh, you hear that rumble? You can tell that is not a stock exhaust. So the interior in either car is not fantastic, but I think the Subaru STI has the edge over the Mitsubishi Evo. This is a little bit more dated, a bit simpler, and the seating position itself is actually not nearly as optimal. You don't have any telescoping to the wheel, only tilt. And these Recaros, again, last model year before they removed them, because in 2015, it was due to the side airbags, I guess the bolstering with the Recaros compromised that. But I'm just not very comfortable here. The side bolstering on the thighs is a little bit too aggressive. I can't actually sit without it cutting into my legs. However, on the back, for me at least, 180 pounds, 6'1", it feels fine. But these seats do feel a little bit tight on the bottom, and I can't get quite as an optimal of a position. My arms are really stretched out here. And you can also see this manual transmission was designed for the right-hand drive market, which is why the owner did this short shift kit, which actually angles it back, because initially it's tilting this way and the whole thing is shifted over. It's closer to the right-hand side. He put on the, we have the white shift knob as well, because that's what they were using in the rally cars. So you can see it with all the dirt and such flying around. You can tell the ethos of the car with the all-wheel drive system is very different, because unlike the Subaru, which is the driver-controlled center diff, this active center diff just gives you 3 settings. So you have tarmac, gravel, and snow. We're going to be in tarmac, and there's nothing else to really set. A lot simpler. Only a 5-speed manual transmission here. We also have these pretty long throws, even with this aftermarket shift kit. And a little bit more slick, not quite as notchy as the Subaru. I wouldn't say the transmission is the strong point in either car. Gear ratios here feel a bit closer together, which is fine when you're doing spirited drives on the canyons and such, but I feel like if you're if you're on the highway, you're probably going to be at like 80 miles an hour or 4,000 RPM or something really obnoxious like that, which is going to wear on you, especially with the aftermarket exhaust being quite a bit louder. Oh yeah, that's definitely quite a bit more power. But again, not really a fair comparison because this is modded. Heel toe here is more challenging, less optimal ergonomics in the pedal box. It's the throttle is too high up. Suspension here with these aftermarket springs, you can feel more of that high frequency chatter in the road. It's not as comfortable, it's stiffer, but you're still getting quite a bit of body roll. And I think part of that is simply because this has an inline 4, not a flat 4. You have a higher center of gravity as a result. Bit more of a tossing this thing around, you can get this to rotate a little bit easier. It's a bit more playful than the Subaru. Faster steering ratio as well. Now going back to the weight distribution, I think that the Subaru is a little bit more balanced front to rear. I think this car is a little bit more front heavy and also higher center of gravity with that engine. But the all-wheel drive system is tuned in such a way, with also that active yaw at the rear, that you can more easily elicit some rotation with throttle. Another Lancer, non-Evo. Just like when we were driving the STI, we had another STI driving by as well. The steering here is also, you know, normally newer cars have faster steering ratios and older cars have slower steering ratios, but in this instance, even though it's 7 years older, this car has a noticeably faster steering ratio, has a bit more feedback as well through the wheel, but the center here has a little bit of slop, which I didn't have in the STI, and it's a lot lighter weight, and then once you start getting past a couple degrees, then it weights up. And what you actually want is the weighting of the steering to increase and decrease based on the load at the front tires, not just based on the angle at which you're putting it to the steering wheel. Clutch engagement point here is also quite gradual, but it's a lot higher, that bite point. I'm finding the throttle mapping a little bit sluggish here compared to the Subaru. Now in the Subaru, we had those 3 different settings of the throttle mapping. We went with the middle setting, Sport. And here there is no different throttle map settings, it's just one. And it does feel a bit sluggish, not only at, whoa buddy, not only at lower RPMs, but even at higher RPMs, it still feels a bit sluggish. Just a little bit of a learning curve, not a huge deal. Let's get these revs back up to 4,500 RPM, just like in the Subaru, and floor it. A little bit more lag compared to the Subaru, but that's expected because of all the mods. Let's give you a pull uphill. I love with the Evo, you get a few extra 100 RPM before redline. You can really feel it compared to the STI. Definitely has that extra grunt, which is very welcome. I mean, the cars, these aren't lightweights, right? 3,500 pounds, a little bit above, a little bit below. So now that this thing is making more than 300 to the wheels, it feels more adequate. I feel like that power bump is needed. Even on these really mild turns, you can feel that body lean. Overall, I'm finding this to be a little bit more of an emotional experience. Now, part of that is going to be the audio, right? Just the sound of the engine, the fact that it's more forward with the mods, that helps. And again, I admit, this is not a fair comparison, right? Modded Evo versus stock STI. But I think the biggest reason why this feels more emotional for me is that active yaw control, it allows you to dance with the car a little bit more. it's almost like a little bit more, I'm not gonna say razor edge, but more in that direction of being sharper, being a little bit more sporty and not going after stability as much. Still a very stable car, but still willing to dance with you a little bit. And after all these years of driving multiple different STIs and multiple different Evos of different generations, which you guys can find linked below, I've noticed that tends to be the common theme, which is that the Evo is a bit more of the enthusiast choice. The driving is more engaging, but of course you're paying a price. Like the interior it feels not quite up to the same standard as Subaru. Neither are great, and even the ergonomics here are way more compromised than in the Subaru, no doubt about that. But if I'm going just for driving pleasure, Evos tend to just have the edge. That's the theme I'm seeing across the different examples I've driven, even when you get off the throttle. Gotta blip those downshifts extra hard. And if you're willing to look past those limitations of the Evo, because I feel like the two cars are trading punches, trading blows, and then you get to the twisties. Oh yeah, it wants to dance a little bit. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Now when you're getting heavy on the brakes, you feel quite a bit of dive, possibly even more than the Subaru, because again, think of center of gravity, think of suspension tuning, but it gives you a little bit more of that dynamic rotation, the trail braking, the weight transfer that you want as you're trail braking a car into a corner, right? Overall, the Evos just seem a bit more dynamic than the Subarus, whereas the Subarus feel more stable and more livable. It's like the compromised, more dynamic, less daily driver friendly of the Evo versus the less compromised, more stable, but not quite as dynamic, but way more daily driver friendly of the STI. And that, I think, is the best way to summarize it, which is they're both great options. Slightly different flavors for slightly different use cases. Big shout out to the owners, Nate and Neil, for letting me review their cars. Check out Nate's channel on site, linked below. Big thanks to Neil as well. My friends, which would you choose? Leave a comment down below. Much love, and I'll see you all in that next one.